Thank you guys for tuning in to another Broken English podcast. I am your host, Bola Amadara, with my co-host.
Hugo Lunny.
And today we're talking about a couple of topics, and one of them being controversial. We'll start off with off the bat, is this whole climate when it comes to race and racism and all of that in the film and television world and media in general, I guess. Now we were talking about that in the last. We talked about this briefly in the last podcast, but we only just touched on it briefly because there was, especially, mainly because there was a lot for me to digest at that point. And to be honest with you, I don't think I've digested enough of this, but I'll chime in on this later and tweet my apologies later. It's just because to me, I've been trying to avoid a lot of media, or just reduce my intake when it comes to just news and the information stream, and because it's just too much.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of propaganda, and there's just a lot of opinions and not enough honesty. It's kind of like a mess right now. It's so I wouldn't say I have hardcore opinions about all of this, because it's just interesting to watch it, because some of these things that have come up, I don't even know where to begin. Um, just yesterday, I'm hearing rumblings about Gone with the Wind, and this is a perfect example. Like, I mean, what do you do, right? What do you do? Because you watch that film now, and yeah, there's a lot of there's a lot to say about something like that, right? For me, it's like I just like I said, this is just mainstream stuff, so I haven't fleshed this all out. One of the first
That's
things
what we
that
like.
comes, what was that?
So that's what we like.
Well, yeah, it's
We don't
just
want it to be too rehearsed.
no, it's just no, I don't. Yeah, true. I don't like overhear her stuff, so I'm just gonna speak from the mainstream. Um, the first thing that comes to my mind when it comes to things like this, where films are being talked about being taken down or whatever, uh, you just have to understand these these things were made in certain times where people just didn't know any better, and these films can't speak for themselves at this moment. They can only speak for themselves at that time.
Hmm.
I don't know what good it is gonna come from making these films disappear. I just don't really see what exactly is gonna that's gonna achieve. They're there. Uh, it's been a while since I even watched Gone with the Wind. I mean, that movie was like what 5 hours long or something like that, and I don't think I was the biggest fan of it. Um, but I do recognize it was a revolutionary film at that time. It was the first time even I think a African American won an Oscar. But it's kind of funny when you just reading about that and just knowing about that film. I mean, she won an Oscar, but even at the Oscar, she had to sit at a separate table from away from all from the other white actors, which is just kind of interesting and telling at that about that time.
Hmm.
Uh, like I said, there's a lot going on here, and I can't really say definitively anything. I,
Well, I think John Stewart put it really well because he's promoting a new film that he directed. And with regards to Gone with the Wind, he put it very, very well. He was saying, so they're going to take a film which was made many, many years ago that nobody cares about right now, that nobody's bothered about watching, and their stance is, we're going to take this film and we're gonna hide it away a second. No one was looking for the film anyway at the moment. Yes, it has horrible stereotypes, but you're kind of missing the point. And this is what we got into a bit the other day when we were talking about this. There's the idea of art and art in its time,
yeah,
which we also alluded to on the previous podcast where we were speaking about when a film comes out, the cultural climate, etc., etc., etc.
yeah,
That is not to say that the way Black people were portrayed in the film wasn't controversial, but pieces of art should be left as is because as soon as you remove them, you start getting them infamy, you start getting them a wider audience, you start getting them all these other things, and you really change nothing. Changing a piece of art that's already come out is nonsensical to me. Like them banning Little Britain and then doing other things which do have controversial things within them.
I'm not familiar with Little Britain. What's that about?
Little Britain was an early 2000s sketch comedy, and within it, there was a blackface sketch,
Right.
which was meant to poke fun, obviously, at one portion of society. But there were also other sketches which poked fun at other portions of society because the show itself was just teasing Britain.
Right.
It was
Okay.
teasing the people within there. And of course, there was the idea that to portray black people, they put on blackface. To portray women, they put on fake breasts, made their hair longer and their bodies and changed their voice, etc. It was a sketch show,
Yeah.
which in and of itself is an entirely different entity. But when you get into banning things,
Mm-hmm.
you don't help further the cause. You don't help solidify things. It's completely different when you talk about taking down a statue of a slave trader
Yeah.
versus you talking about a movie or a TV show which was out of touch and is irrelevant and was produced many years ago. You know, these aren't the same thing.
This is the thing. The thing that will always keep coming up for me, for these things, is context. Right.
Yes.
That's all I'm interested when these things come up. What is the context of blackface, or what is the context of it? Because yeah, there are some things that are. It sounds like there will be some cringy elements to this whole. What's it called? It's called. This is
Little Britain.
Little Britain, right? If there was no if the context was just done in a way where it's cringy, I understand that. But there are some contexts. But like I said, it boils down to me in context. Is it self aware or not? Something like that I can understand. It sounds like it could rub people the wrong way and it might be cringy. But when I watch something like Tropic Thunder, for
Mm-hmm.
example,
Mm-hmm.
I think I can speak for most black people. I don't think anybody was offended by that because Tropic Thunder knew what it was doing. That was the whole premise of the whole thing, right?
Right.
It was supposed to be making fun of that, right? It's self-aware that it knows what it's doing, right? So when it comes to this, right, context is key. So for example, Tropic Thunder is a prime example of this. I still think that whole thing was hilarious because it
Mm-hmm.
was self-aware. It was poking fun of that whole thing, right? That whole world, that whole acting. It wasn't blackface done where they were ignorant of the what they're ignorant of the whole connotation of it, right? They weren't just doing it. They weren't just putting a white actor trying to make him play a black person, right? It was making fun of that part. So it's a perfect example of context. What's the context of it? So something like that doesn't offend me, and I think it's funny. But but I understand there's could be other situations where it's like there's just no self awareness. There's no and the and there's no self awareness in it, and it just comes off cringy.
Mm-hmm. I mean, my argument is that it kind of falls underneath the whole stand-up comedian thing and the right to mock and offend everything and not ban everything. Um, of course, there is racial sensitivity, quite rightly,
Right.
but muddling art and muddling real change and the structure in the world does not serve the purpose. The purpose is to simply have everyone treated equally. And if we have everyone treated equally, then you should be mocked and you should be mocked, or neither one of you should. We have to go under a consistency banner.
There's exactly. I don't know what the magic formula is because for me, it's like when I see it, I just know when these things are bad. When I see it, I just feel it, right? Like for
Right.
example, I'll show another example that I I don't know if you remember. Do you remember when Jimmy Kimmel had a show and he would do Karl Malone? And
I've heard of, never seen, not a
I
big fan.
I remember that. Um, but it wasn't. Now the thing is, it was a full makeup prosthetic, right? It wasn't just somebody slapping, dark. dark makeup on him and it's sloppy looking or that
Hmm.
kind of thing. It was like a full prosthetic makeup where like, you know, they went it's the whole shebang, right? So it wasn't some sloppy put together thing, right? To me it was just I don't like it, to me I just saw a white actor or comedian trying to do somebody who happened to be black, and he was just dressed up like that. To me it didn't it just didn't raise any alarms in me because it was done in a tasteful way, I would say, where if it was like him just some half-had, because we just know the history of blackface, so this is why, and I understand the sensitivities of it because
Right.
it
Yeah. No.
comes
Of
from
course.
somewhere, right?
Yep.
Have you seen Spike Lee's Bamboozled? Because
I know of the film. I've never seen it.
it's about this, and it's, I think anybody who's watching this right, listening to this or watching this right now, watch that film. It's one of his best movies, and it's just about this.
Mm.
And I think it just it's to me if you want to know the history of this stuff and want to see a perspective about
Does
it,
it cover like the minstrel show and things
yeah,
like that?
it's about the minstrel shows, and it's like it's basically the premise is it's like the minstrel show comes back, and
Okay.
it's a modern minstrel show, and it gives you the whole history of, you know, blackface and the whole minstrel show. And because some people might be listening to this, and especially those who are younger, and they don't really know the history of all that of
Hmm.
blackface, right, and minstrel shows. So
Hmm.
they might not be aware of, they might not truly be aware of what the controversy is ultimately about. So right after you get off of Wikipedia, I recommend you watch Bamboozled because it's a great film. Especially, it's a great film in itself, and it's a great film for this topic because it gets to the heart of it, and it's a perfect film about blackface and minstrel shows.
I mean, my view is that retroactively tackling art is not the way forwards. I think the correct way to deal with any of these things, because of course 30 Rock as well, 30 Rock
Yeah,
retired like 6 episodes worth of the show because of the same thing.
I don't never
I,
watch those episodes. So I don't even know what the context of it was.
I've probably watched them, but I don't remember them because I think I've seen all of 30 Rock, but they wouldn't have stood out to me because I don't remember them. But the point that I'm trying to make is I don't think it's helpful to eradicate art in that manner. I
Yeah.
think that all it does is draws more attention to the art and draws more attention um, to have people look for these episodes.
I think these. Sorry, go.
No, no. I think that's entirely separate from attacking monuments and things along those lines that portray slave traders and recognize people who in the past committed atrocities.
Yeah.
These are they really have to be seen as completely separate.
Yeah, those. This is. I think that's a separate topic in itself. But uh, I was gonna say that I think you should allow people to vote with their wallets and their attention.
Completely.
You, if people find it cringy, they're just not gonna watch it. And if they don't, then I don't think. I mean, we've been having these discussions enough, and there's a greater awareness, right? So with that being said, I think people should be able to choose themselves whether they want to or not watch these episodes or these movies. I mean, I don't. And here's the second part, and I think this is the biggest part. Just simply removing these things, you haven't removed racism. It's just this is the point. It's like this is the biggest point. It's like you're not actually. One can even say you're making the situation even worse.
Well, precisely because you're going to have the bigots and you're going to have the people that actually think, oh, wait, this is some sort of attack on them, seeing it as a slight, as opposed to really what the theoretical cause of it is, which is, I want to remove this to try and make amends. Okay, but it isn't going to serve the purpose that you're wanting to.
Right.
You want to improve race relations in a plethora of other different ways,
Right.
ones that will
Yeah.
actually improve them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I this to me this is just sweeping the issue under the rug.
And I think it's also complicating things quite a bit. I mean, the other thing is the retiring of a lot of white voices in animations.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I saw that
they've
yesterday.
now they've now changed this. So I'd mentioned to you, Jenny Slate is leaving Big Mouth on Netflix because she was portraying a young black girl, and she is, uh, you know, an adult white woman. You ever see Family Guy? You must have seen Family Guy.
Yeah,
So you know the voice of Cleveland is a white guy.
yeah. I didn't know that.
So the voice of Cleveland is a white guy,
Oh, is it? Holy shit.
and he's leaving.
I thought it was a
And
black. I thought it was a black dude.
he's leaving
Oh wow.
so that a black actor can play the voice.
Oh wow. Okay.
Now, I think that makes it more complicated. Now, in no way am I
I'm mixed
saying,
on that actually.
well, I'm mixed as well because the thing is, in no way am I saying I don't think black actors should play black roles. They definitely should. It's kind of it makes sense. But also there is, and you of all people should be more aware of this. It's the idea of an actor playing something that they're not. You have played a blind person
Hmm.
in C.
Yeah.
You're not blind. Bryan Cranston played a paraplegic in a movie. He's not a paraplegic. It's called acting. It's an extension of. And what are your thoughts on that particular one there?
Dude, oh, the voice. I'm just kind of mixed on it because I agree. Well, yeah. Fuck. Because it's just when it comes to animation, it's a different thing. But you would want that. I mean, I would, like I said, I would want diversity everywhere it's supposed to be, right? So
Of course, I want diversity normally because diversity is normal.
from a practicality thing, it's like I'll just say this. I'll just say this. It may not be intellectually fleshed out. I don't know, or I don't think it ever will be. But I would prefer whatever whatever the character's ethnicity is. I would prefer it being voiced by the person who is that ethnicity. I
And I
would
get that.
prefer, but I just don't know. Going back retrospectively, I don't know about that. I just don't know retrospectively about that. I don't think it should be a mandate retrospectively. I think it's a preference. Like just
I
thinking about it now, just not realize, like just realizing the guy who plays Cleveland is not African American. Um, I think it wasn't the way he voiced it was pretty accurate. Now,
But does it bother you, for example, that Bart Simpson's played by a woman?
no, it doesn't because I'm not a well. No, it doesn't. As a guy, it's like I wouldn't be offended at all. Like
Because the thing
not
that
an
I think
iota. Why? I mean, why?
my problem is when political correctness enters the foray too much. Because I think there should be the opportunity in every area for the best person in the job. So, sorry, for the best person for the job to get it. Now, for example, there was a lot of controversy to do with Idris Elba potentially playing James Bond. I think he'd be a fantastic James Bond.
Mm-hmm.
I James Bond, I don't believe needs to have a particular skin color.
I don't
He's
think.
just meant to be.
Yeah,
He's meant to be a debonair guy.
yeah. It's a vibe thing, right? And I think Idris Alba just has that vibe.
Yeah.
Like it's just like I mean, Pierce Brosnan, I think was the best James Bond because I think he was just.
Sean Connery. Sean Connery.
We'll leave that top debate to the next time. For me, Pierce Brosnan was born to play James Bond, and I think Idris Elba was born to play James Bond. I mean,
I think he'd be great.
I think he would be fucking. It would be one of the best James Bonds. But
But then you had people come up with a controversy saying, well, no, it can't be played by a black guy because, of course, he has to be this particular white guy. Well, no, he
was
doesn't.
like, I don't
I,
think that's a. Sorry, go ahead.
no, no, you go ahead.
Um, I just don't. I don't see it. If it was Winston Churchill, yeah, okay. But James Bond, I mean, he's been played by a Scotsman. He's been played by he's been played by some English person. Has he been played by somebody who's Irish
I
or
don't believe
Welsh?
so. No, I believe it's just been Brits
It's just
and then Scott.
right, but it's a
Well,
Brit
it's Brit.
it's a British thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
To me, I see Idris Elba, I see British, and it's not a skin color thing. British, I think to be British now is beyond, it spans a wide spectrum now. If it was
Completely.
if he was a Russian character, okay, I get it. Right? They're a little bit more entrenched in what it is to be Russian. But uh if we look at the current landscape of things, there's a wide spectrum of being British, right? And
Hmm.
I think Idris Elba fits that, fits it,
Couldn't agree more.
and fits the character. Most importantly, I mean, it's just he just screams James Bond.
I think that in any role, it is the character that comes first. And I agree with you completely in terms of it matters whether you're portraying a historical figure
Yeah,
or you are portraying a character that doesn't have any particular genealogical roots. If
right.
it happens to be something like, for example, I'm not going to play a black guy in a film because you're going, I don't know about that. But I could play someone from a number of different countries.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. Um, and I think Idris Elba would be great in that. As I say, I think the problem with regards to the voiceover thing is while I completely agree that we should always aim to have this, I also think that there should be the ability to have a woman play a man if it can come off as a man or if it can come off as a boy or whatever. And I think you should be able to have a black guy voice a white character. And I think they should be able to have these things if they are the best performer for the role.
Yeah. I
And
would.
you just said there with regards to the Cleveland show, you said you never knew.
I didn't even know.
So he did a good job.
Yeah, he did a good job. Because it's just like sometimes when people try to do like an African or a black accent or African American voice, it's just cringe. It's just not well done, and it's
Mm-hmm.
condescend and it comes off condescending, right?
I'm very
Stereo
stereotypical.
stereotypical and condescending. So in regards to Cleveland, I think he nailed it, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
like it's like it's you know it didn't take me out of the character because he nailed
Right.
it. So it's hard to I wouldn't I'll just say this, I probably wouldn't have asked the guy to step down or something like that.
I don't know whether he
I
was asked to, whether he voluntarily did it or not, or what.
Yeah,
I know that it was announced that he will be, so I don't know the constraints surrounding that.
right. It's this is this he it's funny this it's more it's just harder for me to come to any kind of hard conclusion when it comes to an animation because it's so murky.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there is necessarily a hard conclusion that you do or don't come to, but more so from my perspective, um, I think in order to, it's kind of a hard thing to really work on because the argument that Kimberly Jones, the video I sent you, the argument that she had made with regards to the monopoly analogy and starting from a position of trying to
Yeah.
become
Hmm.
on an even playing field. I get that argument with regards to the voiceover world and things like that. I do get it.
Hmm.
Problem is, maybe I'm actually completely getting rid of my own argument now that I'm considering
Which is
that
good.
part.
It's evolving. I mean,
Yeah,
this
it
is good.
evolved in
It's
like
just like
20 minutes.
we're just kind of like I said. This is like me flushing it out
Yeah, I think that's actually a fair point that I've potentially just contradicted myself on.
because these things, like I said, these things are just kind of multi-level, and it's like it's just it's hard to know at that moment unless you start talking about it. Like going back to the just briefly to the animation thing and the voiceovers, right? We have these conventions in film and television that are interesting. One of them being example, this thing where we people were this thing with the British upper class English accent. You notice when films take place in antiquity or certain places, they all there's this convention to use a British accent. Like
Yeah, it's the posh upper class.
yeah, it's to use that posh upper class British accent for uh, places that take place in antiquity, like Rome, Egypt, for example. It's just been a convention for some reason. Even though it's like when you think about it, it's like, yeah, okay. It's a because I guess it would be weird if we were watching something taking place in Rome and they all have Jersey accents or something like that, right? So it's these the conventions that we just kind of
Well, it's the idea of the tropes, you expect it to be this, therefore we're used to it and we'll
yeah.
just go with that.
There's no controversy behind it because it's like, well, it's to me it's like okay, it's I don't have any better solutions,
Right.
but um speaking of that, then it comes into the mind, but then it comes into another controversy of who gets to play who. Because, for example, one of the things that did bother me, even for me, that bothered me, for example, was like for example, when Christian Bale plays Moses, or how Egyptians are sometimes portrayed as white, right? And to me, it's like, why don't they just get Middle Eastern people to play these
Right.
Egyptian people? That's been some. I'll speak on that because I've felt pretty strongly on that. It's like, yeah, why are we having non-Arab or whatever you want, or non-Middle Eastern, non-Arab, non-North Africans playing Egyptians?
Right. And I think that the thing with shows like that, um, I completely agree with you on the one hand. On the other hand, I understand why it's done. It's about business.
Exactly, and I know why they do it. Yeah, like what?
It's like we don't have the bankable name.
Yeah,
So if we don't have the bankable name, we'll go with the bankable name.
it's like what the guy who Ridley Scott said, well, because we can't bank on Muhammad so and so because he's just not a
Right.
name, and I get that. It's a business thing, right? Well, I get it, but to me now, becoming it's just I from as an audience member, for me it just takes me out of it now. I'll just speak from that. When I see it now, it just takes me out of it
Right.
because I know it to me it's like it's just I know I would prefer just to be portrayed by so and so. And also I know from an acting point of view, I mean there's a lot of Middle Eastern guys and Arab or Semitic people who need jobs in this industry too, and these jobs should be going to them. So I look at it
Hmm.
from that point of view, where it's like, like what's his name who played Aladdin, right? And you know how he said like after Aladdin he wasn't even getting any auditions, and it was crazy.
I didn't see anything on that.
Yeah, there was a big. This was a controversy that was happening last year, and Will Smith he's chived in on it too. But he after Aladdin, he was complaining that he wasn't even getting auditions, and I think it was just crazy. But I get it because there's just there's a pecking order when it comes to these things, right?
Hmm.
And now I'm actually getting into something that really pisses me off about this industry, and it's like the whole hierarchy, this blatantly racial hierarchy of like who gets what and who gets portrayed in what. And
Hmm.
at the bottom of that list is like Asians and Middle Eastern people. So when I see something like the Moses movie, it's like, come on, I mean that Arabs should be in that.
Yeah,
Middle
no, I
Easterners should
completely
be in
agree.
it.
And what was the Matt Damon spearheaded one? The Great Wall.
Oh yeah, what was? Oh yeah, the one he goes into China. The one he was in China, ancient
Yeah,
China.
I mean, I didn't see it.
I don't know
I
what
just
the.
remember there being a lot about it.
I think that was another controversy in terms of. I don't know if he was. I don't think he was playing a supposed to be playing a Chinese character. I think it was just. Was it the whole notion of the white savior thing? I think that's what it was.
Might have been, or Tom Cruise in The Last Samurai, or
Yeah,
Emma Stone in that Cameron Crowe film.
or was it Tilda in Doctor Strange?
Oh,
She
was she portraying? I mean, I really like that film. I don't know the comic book.
Yeah,
So,
that character was supposed to be Tibetan.
ah,
Yeah, a Tibetan man, Tibetan. So and it was one
two
of those.
strikes.
Yeah, it was to me. It was like why? To me, it just screamed, the term whitewashing it because it's like
Right.
I don't think I don't think it would have scared anybody off from putting an Asian person into that character.
I think the business side of it tends to assume that people are, or you know what, it might not be the business side of it that assumes it. It might be that people are more racist than unconscious of.
Yeah, that's
So it
true.
might be the business side of it is absolutely true. They go, well, this isn't gonna
Yeah,
people aren't gonna want to see this because people are genuinely more racist than we assume.
and
Could be my ignorance.
I know I would agree with you. I think they know that we know a large part of the audience is gonna. It's so unfortunate, but they know like a large part of their audience might get turned off or consciously or unconsciously get turned off by that.
I
It's
don't understand why.
well, there's just a lot of people that kind of think like that still, right? There still needs to be work done on that. Like I said, I love watch. I go out of my way to watch foreign films because I need to get that perspective and other
Hmm.
people and that diversity thing. But there's a lot of people who just, they see a film. I think most people just don't watch things that are outside of their tribal awareness, right?
Right, which is exactly the problem that we always face because we tend to see people not understanding that the value of um, things you don't grasp, of things you don't understand, of areas you don't know.
If I'm like, let's say I'm an Asian filmmaker and I'm making a film that just takes place with Asian characters, I think I know that this is just not gonna resonate with most people. It's gonna, Asians will watch it because it's about Asian stories and Asian characters and that perspective. But and that's probably what a majority of the audience probably would be. I don't but it's opening up more and more. But I would say for now, most people, like I said, just stay in their sphere of their tribal sphere. And I
Yeah.
think studio heads and producers know that.
Well, and that's the thing. The studio heads and the producers are coming at things from a very succinct perspective, which happens to be we're going to make money and how we're going to make this money. We're not bothered about appeasing. We're not bothered about this. We're not bothered about that. We want to do things which are actually going to end up having us have enough bank afterwards
Yeah.
that we can keep it going and we can get another car. We can this, we can that, we can the third. Which I get the logic. I don't think it's helpful, but I get the logic.
I get the logic, and I don't think it's helpful either. One can say that this is also, and I've been saying this for a long time too, that it's the audience has to take the burden of this too, because a lot of this stuff is just mirroring your own sentiments.
Um, yeah, and it's a vote with the wallet. It's if films which don't represent you do well, and when I say represent you, I mean represent your taste and your view on the world. If they don't do well, there'll be less made. And if films which portray people in certain manners or exclude certain people, etc., do exceptionally, then they'll make more of them.
Yeah, it's just they're definitely, whatever makes money, right? That's where they're gonna go. That's where these people, that's what they know, right? Uh, but there's still a lot of work in this department. Still a lot of work to be done, because it's like it's the you still see it, and it's like I said. I think this is a symbiotic thing with culture in itself and the sentiments out there. You know.
Yeah, I mean, the TV show I stood in for earlier this year, their initial hope was to shoot it in a US state. They wanted to shoot it in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to shoot it in Atlanta because they wanted to have a larger group of Black crew members.
Mm-hmm.
Because in Vancouver, the majority of crew are white.
Mm-hmm.
You have, I'd say, less than 1% are white and Asian.
Yeah. It's also because of just simply the demographics of this town,
Yeah,
right?
there aren't many Black people in Vancouver. Percentage wise, there are not many.
There's like, I count them all.
The
So
reason
it's
the
just
reason why they say hello to everyone is it's like, all right, that's 15.
I just like I've got a notebook of keeping score and the names, right? So there's not a whole lot. So in that department, yeah, it's just it's you're not gonna get you're just not gonna get a whole lot of black people,
But
right?
that was the idea that the show initially wanted to film down in Atlanta,
Hmm.
was because if they had filmed down in Atlanta, the show, which is very, it's very much, if not entirely race based.
Wait, which is
Um,
Atlanta is a place also I need to go to soon, but that's another
yeah, I
conversation.
want to go there. I want to go there. I've got some friends from Toronto that have been there quite a bit and said how amazing it is.
Yeah,
Um,
it's on my list, high on my list.
yeah, we'll do a trip eventually. I mean, the thing is
They're gonna have to get
I
over the handle of Corona first before I go, though.
yeah, I don't think we'll be going before next year.
I don't think so either. It's gonna be a
Um,
while.
but I mean, no, Atlanta's one of those places where there's been so much stem from it in terms of art that I'm a big fan of. I'd love to go down there. Basically, the idea was with Woke, they wanted to have more of a black crew to allow people the representation in all fields within the industry.
Hmm.
Um,
I get that sentiment, man. Um, I just think it's there's this habit, there's this just this habit thing where it's like we get diversity, and then all of a sudden it creeps back to the lack of diversity.
what even?
Like I've seen this oscillating pattern where you get explosion of diversity, especially ethnic diversity, but then as things just start to creep slowly back into old habits, right, where there's less and less diversity.
Right.
And because I just remember like early 90s, like mid early to mid 90s, there were so many, I'll just say from a black experience, there were so many black shows, and like remember Live in Color, The Fresh Prince, A Different World, the Cosby Show. There was just so much going on there, right? There was just so much. There was and then the movies that were coming out. But then slowly, but then slowly after that, from the mid 90s to even up until recently, all it just kind of crunched.
Hmm.
I felt, all of that crunched back.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely say that there
In
was.
terms of film and television.
But what were the big films? Well, yeah, no, there were a fair few.
Then you had and you had films like, I mean, this is when like Will Smith came out of like blew up, and Eddie
But it was
Murphy.
really when Eddie Murphy was at his peak, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like, actually, sorry, it was like when it started with Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, and then there was just wave, and then all of a sudden there was just like all these like African American shows that are, and like I said, Live in Color, Arsenio, all like
No, I meant in terms of films.
films and films. Then there was like that wave of like, I call it the hood movies, right? Like
Hmm.
Boys in the Hood, New Jack City, Juice,
Menace to Society, Above
Menace
the
to
Rim.
Society, Above the Rim, all of that stuff, right? So on and so on. So there was like that wave, right? Like,
Hmm.
and then Spike Lee and what he was doing. So there was that wave. I remember that, and it just bled into so many things, and there was like just saw all that, and then it kind of just tapered off.
Hmm.
I mean, obviously you do see diversity here. You still see the diversity there, but I just remember there was that explosion and of like black voices prominently in film, right? There was, and I think recently there's been another resurgence of it. Like Jordan Peele, for example, has been on the forefront of that. And then there's been some shows that have been coming out now, like Atlanta, for example,
Hmm.
with that kind of thing. And so I think maybe there's been that recent explosion again. But I just remember it felt like there was a period where that tapered off significantly.
Yeah, I can see that. I think though, hopefully now we're at a time where that's transitioning, because I think that the generations that now exist and the generations that now pay attention want a range of stories.
Yeah.
They want to be the fly on the wall in a black family. They want to be the fly on the wall in an Asian family. They want
Yeah.
to be the fly on the wall in a white family. You
This
want to be the fly wall. You want to learn the story, hopefully or theoretically, about other places and countries and cultures.
Yeah, and I can see that, and I see that more and more, right? Because and this is what these studio heads need to understand is that there's a lot of people, lots and lots of people in the audience now who want to see, like you said, that be that fly on the wall. I think it's probably one of the reasons why Black Panther was so successful. I was surprised.
Oh, I knew that was going to be
I knew it
huge.
was gonna be big, but it was just kind of like just seeing being there in the theaters and seeing the people line up for it, and it was just like it was just interesting. There's like all these people who were interested in that story,
Hmm.
and I think these studio heads need to understand that a lot of people now want to be a fly in the wall to these kinds of perspectives, different kinds of perspectives. I know I've always had that hunger. I think it's just now becoming there's been a cultural shift and there's more and more of that hunger.
Well, I think the important part going on from that, sort of reverting back to what we were saying, is the way you service that is to create more titles and properties to do with those stories. You don't solve it or improve it by eradicating
Right.
old art fiction.
Yeah.
You don't change things retroactively
Yeah.
as well as you do progressively and going forwards. And no one goes, oh, well, let's get rid of that book. Write a new fucking book. Let's do the new books. Let's, yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that. Going back to things retrospectively, I don't think it's a good idea. I think people should just be able to vote with their attention and wallet. If
Yeah.
they don't like it, they don't like it. Just I mean, keep it there. But the only time I can say it's worth taking down if it was something truly hateful.
Yeah, no, definitely. But even that, even if it is truly hateful, has a place of critique.
True. Even
Like
that,
you can
like I
go,
said, that's the only time I'll even entertain it. If it
yeah,
was like pure hatred, inciting violence and
I
bigotry,
agree. I agree. I agree.
I would entertain it. Yeah, but if it's not that, then it's like I just to keep it there and just let people decide for themselves whether they want to watch it or not. It's a subjective thing at that point. It's
And
highly subjective.
it's the enlightenment of understanding what people did wrong, what people thought wrong, how people behave badly that gets you to move to a better point, hopefully. It's learning from other people's mistakes or missteps.
True. And all this stuff is listen, like even what we're doing now in 20, 40 years, we can look back and we're going to find lots of things to cringe at. We're
Not you and I. We're doing everything perfectly. I mean, come on, this will be flawless.
minus us. This
Yeah.
is it will stand the test of time and
Majority of other people, not so much.
put it out there. This will be everything we'll do will stand the test of time and it will never ever offend anybody in the future.
No, we'll probably offend quite a few people. Speaking of
one,
offending other
one or two,
people, pardon?
one or two.
Yeah, one or two non-discerning listeners
Mm.
or viewers. So, speaking of which, or not speaking of which, I love how polished we sometimes come off as. Like, we'll introduce a segment or we'll introduce a particular topic with such a smooth introduction. Speaking of which, and then it's like, oh no, this is not related. So why did I begin with that? Broken English podcast. Think about the first word in in the company name. Um, let's get on to movies and the situation of delays and the rest of it. So last year, I don't remember whether we had mentioned it on the podcast or not, but you were really excited about the Robert Pattinson. I'd forgotten his name, but Denzel Washington's son. Is it was was Denzel Washington's son's name?
I can't remember what's his name.
Denzel Washington's son,
Denzel
both
Washington's
starring.
son. Denzel Jr.
There we go.
Wow.
Starring in the new Christopher Nolan film Tenet. And Bola was all crazy about the trailer and hyped about it. And that was actually meant to be coming out almost immediately. Well, it's now been delayed until the middle of August, I believe. But it is still coming out despite what's going on in the world. So I guess their idea is it's not gonna it's gonna still be able to put enough bums on seats, and the cinemas are still gonna be able to plod through the current landscape. What are your thoughts on the fact that they are going ahead with trying to put this out and not just going the way that so many other films have gone as of late, which is the video on demand route, the get it yourself because it's safer to do?
Um, kudos to them for trying to get it out. I think maybe they should have delayed it a little bit more.
Do you think it is kudos to them?
Kudos to them for trying to get it out, but I think it's a little bit too early. I
Mm-hmm.
think you could save some time because when is the James Bond gonna come out now?
It's been delayed till next year.
I think it might have been a better idea to do that.
And it's the same thing with Mulan. Mulan is coming out apparently the week after Tenet.
Mm. Yeah, I just don't know because I don't know. I don't feel like releasing these films at this time will serve them well because there's like a resurgence of the virus. I don't know how many of these theaters will be open. They'll be definitely half capacity. So from a financial point of view, I don't know if it's a great idea. And then, well, I'll just say that from a financial point of view, I don't know if it's a great idea.
I think from a public health perspective, it's a stupid idea. I mean, look, I'd love to see it.
Yeah,
I think many, many people would love to see it.
I think it's
Um,
great.
I think it's going to be great.
I think if you delayed it for like another year, I don't think it's gonna diminish it.
Precisely. It used to be the norm. It used to be the norm that you'd watch the trailer for the film coming out next year.
Yeah,
Remember, in like the 90s, it'd be, oh, coming soon. And coming soon meant 12 to 14 months from now.
right. Yeah, I don't. I agree. I don't think holding it off for sometime next year. I don't think it would hurt them. It's not gonna.
Neither
It's
do
not
I.
gonna. It's not gonna degrade or anything like that. I don't think people are gonna lose their awareness of it.
The buzz is not just going to evaporate on a
Yeah.
fucking Christopher Nolan film
Yeah.
with a big budget and the star of bloody Twilight.
Yeah. I don't think the buzz is gonna. I don't think the buzz will fade. I think people will understand, and I think the buzz will just be there. It just keep. You can keep it going. You can even reignite the buzz too.
And I think the same thing with Mulan. That already has its established Disney audience. It already has its little bit of controversy to do with um, independent Hong Kong and the lead in the film voicing her opinion on Twitter.
What did she say?
Again,
What did she voiced her opinion on?
I forget exactly what she said, whether it was, I think, I forget whether it was pro China or pro Hong Kong, but she made a comment on Twitter about it, which I know became a very controversial tweet.
Right.
But the point being is, bringing these films out is not smart. I think the idea that many studios had with regards to Trolls World, with regards to King of Staten Island and The Invisible Man and all these other things, putting it on demand allowed people to still purchase, participate, remain safe. They made a lot of money with it. You have to decide, what do you want? Do you want the big theatrical release or do you want people safe? And you have to factor in when is the right time for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's from a public health point of view. I don't think it's a great idea, especially down there, because it seems like there's going to be another. There seems like potentially there's going to be another resurgence of this thing. Could be
Yeah.
even a shutdown. It could. I'm hearing rumblings of certain states kind of pushing back on their reopening of things. Right?
Yeah. Well, I've heard that some states are going to re-shut down.
Yeah.
Like, I think Texas allowed bars to be open and they're closing bars.
Yeah.
Bear in mind that this podcast was recorded on a certain date. So you might have antiquated news here, but still, you're listening to a podcast. So you could be listening to this 10 years from now. Either way,
I still think the alien invasion is happening. So
Yeah, yeah.
that will stand
Make
the test
sure.
of time.
And remember, face masks are basically a 5G tracking system. You got to believe all these really smart
They
conspiracies.
use the 5G as the homing signal to get here from their home world.
I love how amazingly, what a stretch. You know about fabric on your face? And then I've heard arguments made of who was it that told this joke? I'm trying to think. There was a really well told joke that I saw. I forget whether it was Jon Stewart being interviewed by Trevor Noah. Jon Stewart, I miss that man. Um, excellent pundit. But he
Yeah.
said this with regards to face masks. He said people that are trying to shame people or embarrass people who are wearing face masks, etc. Here's what I want you to do. Next time you have an operation or something like that, and your doctor comes in wearing a face mask, tell him, don't be such a pussy. Take the mask off. Tell him off for rubbing his hat, sorry, for washing his hands, and go, just have at it. That gaping wound in me, do what you want. You don't need, like, come on, come on.
When did face masks become politicized?
Well, during this time period,
It's amazing.
in the past 2 months, I think it's partly due to the very, very smart and well learned president talking about, sorry, refusing to wear them publicly in photos.
Okay, I can't wait for breathing to become a political.
You know what I mean?
I can't wait for sectarian violence when it comes to breathing
Just amazing.
and the partisan debates on whether to eat or not eat.
Just, it could not be less intelligent.
I'm not disagreeing on. I can see you taking a position on the mask based on the health merits and the practicalities of it. I just don't. I don't know. It seems to be a uniquely American. I don't know if it's an American thing, but how that became a left and right thing is beyond me.
I mean, look, what does it matter if you're wearing a mask
Exactly.
in public at a point whereby you could make people deathly ill?
Exactly. Whether it helps, I don't know. I just know it doesn't hurt. So who cares, right? If it's not gonna hurt, then why is why why is it such a hot topic? People are just so
Because people are people.
in, entrenched in it, and there's just that, and I understand the sentiment, right? Like people feel like some of these things that when the government starts to force these things, it starts to become an overreach, and you have to be careful of that because this is where it's the slow descent into tyranny. I get it. It's cryptic. It happens cryptically, right? But a lot of this stuff, people just take the position, and it's just based on ideological reasons that
Mm,
sometimes don't. Well, just a lot of times, most of the time, those don't make any sense. I don't wear the mask because, as of now, because I've calculated things and practicalities, and I've just decided for my own self, I don't really think it's necessary. But when I see somebody wearing it, especially at a restaurant, like a waiter, for example, like if you notice, especially around here, if you go dine in, a lot of the wait staff, if not most of them, are all wearing face mask. Makes it harder to
I
hear.
do wear a mask. I do wear a mask more often than not. Um, Based on the idea that I do interact with my mom and my dad, who both have underlying health conditions, and
Yep,
I don't want to put them at risk.
I
Um,
get it.
and I think until you have a position whereby we have either a vaccine and or just such phenomenally low numbers that it isn't seen as a threat, I don't see the problem with it. I am astounded by those that do. I do think in a situation like a crowded movie theater,
Mm-hmm.
it is a stupid position to have because I don't know how they're going to be doing the viewings. Are they doing the viewings that people are going to have to be wearing masks
It's
at the viewings?
optional. I know
So
here. I know for Cineplex here, it's optional.
to me, that's ludicrous. Oh, is Cineplex already open?
They're opening in the next few days, I believe.
Okay, because to me, that's ridiculous. We're going to be sitting in a room I'm going to be sitting in a room with, even if they reduce the capacity of each auditorium, I'm going to be sitting in a room with potentially 100 other strangers.
Yeah,
I don't know where they've been. I don't know who they interact with, etc., etc., etc. And there's a fucking pandemic going on right now.
that's the thing. And
So,
and it's a pandemic right now, and we don't know conclusively. We don't know. There's a lot of unknowns about this, and
right,
especially in terms of how this thing actually spreads.
right.
Right.
But I mean, the notion that you would wash your hands and be cautious is not really anything that I could think people would go, oh, I don't know if I think that
Yeah,
makes
that when
sense.
that became a part of, when the Civil War started because of that, I don't I wouldn't know what to say.
Do you see yourself going to theaters?
I don't, I do if I really want to see it. Maybe I'll be a little bit more strategic about it. I think I'll just probably go into it knowing that probably if I go at certain times, I'll probably be the one of the very few people there.
But can you really bank on that variable right now? Because surely you would imagine that other people would have the same mindset. Oh, I'll go for the matinee. Oh, he thought that, and she thought that, and she thought that.
Uh, well, like I said, I'm calculating things here. You have to remember, like in all of this province, we've only had like 2,000 cases or something like that. 2,000 something cases. It's very low out here, so it gives me a little bit more wiggle room to be in these kinds of places. I haven't really come to a conclusion. I'm just gonna have to make a decision on it. I just don't know.
As I say, if Tenet comes out on video on demand, I'll buy it.
I'd just rather
I'll
watch.
rent it,
I'd,
whatever.
I'd rather watch it in the theaters
I would rather, but at the moment, the theaters aren't worth the risk.
because I'll just say this. I mean, I've been during this time, especially recently, I've been in places, lots of crowded places, and doing the distancing thing and making sure I'm being mindful of what I'm touching and sanitizing myself and hands and everything like that. I'm just thinking, what now? With that being said, would that be any more of a threat if I'm in a theater?
I would say yes.
I guess so, but how exponentially? How much? I don't know. I don't know
Well,
how.
look at it this way: if you're distancing yourself from a crowd, you're not lingering.
Mm-hmm.
You're not lingering close to someone. You're not being around them properly for any length of time. You're in a crowd or whatever, and you're moving through. If it's a 2 hour film, that means you're in a room for 2 hours with 200 people breathing. If they're asymptomatic, you're in that same enclosed space for 2 hours.
I would definitely be if I was in New York, if I was in New Manhattan or something, I would be definitely 100% on that side. I'm not going. Just knowing where I am right now and what's going on in this province and in this city, my opinion changes on that. It's like I'm half I'm in the middle, being based on the local variables.
Right.
That's where I stand.
All right.
Yeah. So you can be in the So what I predict in what I predict in the U.S. would be everybody in the theater will be broken up into those wearing a face mask and those wearing a MAGA hat. It'll just be a sea of face mask and MAGA hats.
Yeah.
It'll
Yeah.
it's that in the it's that it's that divided there. Since this is a whole partisan thing here.
My God. All right. Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up this week. So, Bowler says go to the theater and be careful. I say wait for now. Do you have any more to add?
I don't have anything more to add. It's no, it's just like I think we. It was interesting that we started like diving into that whole controversy right now when it comes to film and television because it was an exercise of kind of like figuring out how you feel about these things.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad that there were there was a civilized debate about
Fuck you.
it. You know, that's just been one of the things that I just been so cringy watching a lot of this stuff, because it's just a lot of impassioned people entrenched in their talking points and not really
Right.
exploring the topic. But
We do a good job of that.
I think we did a great job. I think we were a shining example of how to handle this topic.
And if you don't like the Broken English podcast, you're racist.
Freaking MAGA hat wearing.
Did you hear the Ron the Jules little skit on that?
No.
Um, there's this woman, she goes, yeah, and I think, I can't remember exactly, so I'm going to butcher the parody, but it's like, one of them's white and one of them's black, so if you don't like them, you're automatically racist.
I don't think I've heard that one, but no, actually, it kind of does sound familiar.
It's on RTJ4.
Oh yeah, that's where I heard it. Yeah, that's where I heard it, because I was, yeah, okay. I'll have to listen to
So
it.
in the Broken English setup, you're LP and I'm Killer Mike.
Okay, we'll have to talk about that. We'll have to discuss that over that.
I'm on about in the movie.
I tried to end this on a good note, but unfortunately I just failed. So
You did.
At least we didn't. We were 90% of it. I think we we got
There's
it
still
right.
time to ruin it more.
And on that note, folks, thanks for listening. I think this has been another interesting podcast, and stay tuned for more. And yeah, and until then, stay safe and peace out.